the library and the park sounded bad. Now we're looking at a library on a parking lot that's going to affect Fair Oaks in a big way. Nobody's thought about that.
Well, we don't know that yet.
I'm saying looking at it. It's part of what an EIR is going to require.
Yeah, but we can't come to any conclusions as to what those studies will be until we do them.
All we're saying is looking at it.
Yeah, of course, we'd look at them.
Yeah, it's more important to spend that $30,000 on the traffic and the parking than haste. I'm sorry for a platitude, but haste makes waste. That'll probably be the best $30,000
This is
you've
$100,000.
ever spent.
This is 100,000, not
100,000, then 100,000.
We've already spent.
Because it's more important that we do it right than it is hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, and let's get this thing done because it's costing us too much money.
That's not what we were saying. What we were saying is we received a recommendation from staff and the outside environmental consultant that the process that we were proceeding with would be the appropriate process. We have new information. We felt that given the incremental cost of close to $100,000 was worthy of careful consideration before committing to do that. It is by no means wanting to not go through the process. And part of the work already done to date included a traffic study with parking that cost in excess of $20,000 or $30,000.
Very shoddy.
We are hearing you, and we are evaluating what we've heard from the community, and we are thoughtfully making a recommendation to spend the additional funds. But we have done it with an analysis from staff, the planning department, and the environmental consultant. And we wanted to understand all the facts and the risks. And that's what we're doing.
Paul, I encourage you to keep a sharp eye on all the expenses to make sure that no money is expended unnecessarily. You said that, and I want you to know that I think everybody here supports you.
I'm not challenging it, but I think
I want you to challenge anything that you think is unnecessary expenses.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We want to hear it.
We want to hear about it.
Because I don't like spending taxpayers' dollars any more than you do. So let's keep it, so you keep an eye on us. Don't let us get wild here.
Yeah,
We do. We care about this money.
we care about it.
Yeah, and I do too, and I don't like to create the impression that I'm against the committee and what it's doing.
We don't feel that at all.
Well, sometimes I feel as though I might be perceived that way.
No, I was actually I was going to actually ask the question if you at some point would be interested in serving on the committee or
Well, right
being
now,
being noticed. You know, we'd be happy to notice you of our meetings. We do post them, but we can advance as is required under the Brown Act. But to the extent you'd like to be involved, we'd be happy to include you.
Right now, I've got a full plate with the rail committee, and the way
Certainly.
that seems to be going in the right direction. And if that project dies, why I might have more time for other things.
Okay.
But right now, I would remain interested and probably want to attend your meetings and contribute what I can.
I'd just like to make one little comment. Last week, I'm the president of the Atherton Library Board, and last week I was at a meeting in Emory with presidents of other library boards in the county. And
Friends groups.
yes, friends groups, yeah, president of other friends groups. And it was amazing to me that none of these groups have the advantage we do of having the money and a choice of sites to build the library. Most of these places are not donor city funds. They have to, Pacifica has to go out and do a bond issue. Half of these places don't have any land to put anything. And they were just drooling over the fact that we had both of those capabilities in hand. So I hope we can remember sometime that we are actually very lucky to be in the position to be doing this.
And that this is a joyful process.
Yeah. As a community, it should be something that's a positive thing for us compared to everybody else who's retrenching. There's a lot of libraries who are cutting way back on their hours and everything, and so we're very fortunate to be in the position we're in. So I keep trying to remember that every time, you know, we go through the process, and it's difficult for people, because we should be glad that we can even go through the process.
That's right, we all feel that way.
Here.
Okay.
Brown Act.
Do we need to wrap up 5?
Do we need to wrap up 5? Do we-
Oh, yeah.
I don't feel that we need, do we need a motion on any of this, or is it just a discussion and update?
No,
No.
I think within next meeting, maybe there was action.
Just
The
the-
process, I think.
At the process, or perhaps at our next meeting, we would discuss it and formalize our recommendation in terms of how we would view this process going forward.
By then, we'll have the comments back, is that correct?
We might not, but at least we would, at least, we're not gonna make the formal recommendation of the RFP, but we would at least make a recommendation within an agreement, mutual agreement within this committee as to what we think the process would be and the timetable would be.
Okay.
Then, item number 6 is committee composition, discussion of committee leadership and membership, possible vote on any desired changes to leadership or membership.
Should we wait till everyone is here again to discuss that, or, I guess, I don't know.
I'd like to suggest that we look at adding Wallace Leaf to the committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adding,
What, for what purpose?
adding what or who?
Wallace Leaf.
He's expressed an interest.
Interest in coming
He's
on.
been
See
interested.
A resident, an interested resident?
Yes.
He's an interested resident who has expressed
He's
interest.
been to a lot of meetings.
He's been to our
Council.
meetings, and he's come to, you know, our open houses, and,
You're a retired attorney, I think, from
Yes.
Correct.
Bell.
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
who is a grandfather who spends time in the library with his grandchildren, so he has a personal interest.
All right, do we need a motion? Well, any public comment?
Any public comment?
On what?
Expanding the committee membership or leadership?
I think expanding it is fine. The more the better, up to a reasonable limit. I know that Atherton Rail Committee had at one time 13 members, and now it has 11 with one vacancy, so we could have 12 members on the rail committee, and I don't see any reason for limiting it to any number other than maybe more than that for the library committee, if there are that many people that are interested.
We welcome voices of dissent as well.
I just want to make sure that you review the need to have a quorum, and there are no alternates currently, so that's a maximum.
Did as Wally know the schedule and that he can he attend?
I don't know.
Well,
I think
perhaps,
he's expressed an interest through John.
okay, well, perhaps, and I think because there are 2 committee members here who are not here, perhaps we can further this at our next meeting. Is that,
Okay.
does that seem okay with
Yeah.
everyone?
Yeah.
But maybe in the meantime, we can
Well, in the meantime, talk to Wally,
talk
make
to
sure he
Wally
knows the
and
commitment
understands
of
the
time.
commitment and the time commitment and the work that we're doing, because we welcome his interest. Bill, you have a question?
You have to forgive me, this is my first library meeting. Kathy, just a quick question. Do you serve as an advisor on this committee, or do you serve as a voting member? Or
Voting
both?
member.
Both.
Voting member.
Voting member, town council members, voting.
Yes.
on the committee?
Approved by the council.
And all town committees have the same structure. For example, the Town Center Task Force, Elizabeth Lewis is the chair.
And the Park and Rec doesn't have that kind of a situation. Never had people from who were in as observers, or we never let them vote.
Yeah, Town Center Task Force has 2 council members.
We're voting members.
Okay, just as long as it has.
And the rail, the traffic.
Thank you.
And this one only has one, is there any reason for that, or just that only one expressed an interest?
I would guess that council members are usually pretty busy.
Yes, for
Going to
sure.
other meetings, and that they probably don't need to.
That's right.
So we agree that we'll put this on the agenda for our next regular meeting?
And we'll talk to Wally and make
Yeah.
sure he understands the commitment.
That's great. Okay, the next item is a Brown Act, just sort of a reminder of the Brown Act requirements, and that, you know, as a committee, if we receive a communication from either Teresa or Corinne in terms of mechanics, or we sometimes send out drafts of reports or updates as to what the agenda is, that we don't do or respond to all, and we don't have conversation about these items until we have our meeting here in this, you know, formal meeting of this body. And it's just, feel that, you know, the Brown Act, it can be sometimes a little bit difficult to understand, but I just felt that it would be worthwhile to have a conversation and reiterate that, you know, we can't have an email to one person and then forward it to other people. That could be a serial meeting, and it's not something I think we've done, but, you know, email communication tends to be means of communication, and then we just be aware or remind ourselves.
Well, you can forward emails, but you can't converse.
That's
You can't
correct.
have comments back. And we can all converse with Corinne. We can give Corinne our comments, we just can't converse
First,
amongst
so you
ourselves.
can't forward
So
something
you
and
should
have
make
a
a statement.
conversation.
Sorry, I don't want any comments back.
No comments back.
And you can
No
speak, you know,
conversation.
to 1 or 2 people, you just can't speak with a quorum of people.
Most people.
It's,
Even either at one time or serially, you can't speak with
is it
a
a
quorum.
quorum or
of
is it 3 or more?
people. It's a quorum.
Quorum.
In the
Quorum.
council, it's
Yeah.
3 or more, because that's the quorum.
And
But
it
our
is
quorum here is 4.
4. And to some degree, we have to be careful, and I think this is important, is the larger the committee, the larger the quorum. And I do think it's important that a large body of us, or a large number of people, then can fit within the threshold of the Brown Act and have, you know, conversations. And it's not about wanting to exclude the community or input, but a smaller committee then therefore has a smaller threshold for which a number of people can meet in terms of working on the subcommittee or having conversations about the work of this committee. And so it's also something to be aware of and something that we're conscious of.
I don't have a Brown Act question, but did we want to talk about any outside consultants we might want to be looking at in addition to going forward?
If you do, you should put it on the next agenda, because it's not on this agenda.
We add that to the next agenda. Thank you. Sandy?
I have a question, and it's not related to anything in Atherton. In Menlo Park, I was at a meeting, and the discussion was brought up that if you have a conversation with one council member, a non-council member, has a conversation with one council member, and then has a conversation with a second council member, and the citizen says, the first council member said X, Y, Z to the second council member, they implied that as a violation of the Brown Act.
Between two council members, two would.
No, between,
I realize a citizen, but it would only involve two council members.
well, let's involve 3 council members and 1 citizen that's the relayer of the information. Is the citizen in violation of this?
The citizen can't be in violation.
That's what I didn't understand. Okay.
So that was incorrect.
I heard the same thing you did, and I think that it's become a big brouhaha in Menlo Park on several issues where there's been an intermediary, non-council member
Circulating
allegedly
knowledge or
communicating
transferring.
with a quorum of council members, and so there's a
I think
perception.
then it becomes, the question might become, is the citizen a proxy of one or more of the council members,
Yeah.
basically acting on that council member's behalf? That's what happened in the case of one of the persons who wanted to be mayor. She was asking people to go around for her. And,
Yeah.
and that's a.
That's a violation to the council member, but the Brown Act doesn't affect residents, does it? Okay, thank you. That's just for my own, this, not relevant to anything here, it was just a Menlo Park question, actually. But I thought somebody here might have more knowledge than I have, and they do.
So
Yes.
sorry, I have to excuse myself, I have to pick up my husband from the hospital.
If I'm not out of order, I'd like to, I guess we're almost to public comments,
Yes.
are we? Okay, I want to try to dispel one misunderstanding that keeps popping up. And that is the question about your side and our side. Because your side and our side really doesn't exist, because we want the very same basic thing. I think all of us, just about everybody in town would agree that it's not a matter of do we go ahead with the library. I think that issue has already been addressed, and we've got that. I'm all for a new library, really. It's just that a lot of us don't want it in Holbrook Common Park. And that's, of course, it's a big issue, but.
No, we understand that. We really understand that.
Yeah.
There are,
But I think we
Different
all
members of the community.
together.
of
in
course, but that's why it's a public process. That's why we had our first charrette meeting in June, where all we presented were possible sites and the criteria. We did not present any position by this committee at both meetings. It was for the community and for us to hear from the community. We don't view it that way at all. Thank you. Do you have any other public comments?
Is this now the public comment?
Yes, it
period?
is.
Okay, and can it include items not on the agenda?
Yes, you can.
Okay, first item not on the agenda is, I think this book by Thomas Friedman and Michael Mandelbaum, That Used to Be Us, should be required reading for every citizen, every voting citizen in the United States. And I'm not quite all the way through with it, but they do a great job of describing where we are. And the front piece says, how America fell behind in the world it invented and how we can come back. So I recommend this to everybody.
Thank you. I remember the day that you were going to go and pick that up, so.
Yeah, I saw him on Charlie Rose review the book, and then I went and got it. The second thing I'd like to bring up is, this was in the Post yesterday. Libraries offer plenty of titles for Kindle owners. And I've been a big pusher of, I guess, the consideration of the impact of ebooks on library size. Regardless of where the library is, I think the size is the most important consideration that has to be made first. And here it says that the Santa Clara Library has just become a participant in Kindle Books, ebooks program, and they now include 8,000 books available as ebooks. and they plan to increase their budget for ebooks purchases threefold. Within the next year, they plan to buy 3 times as many ebooks as they have in the past. I don't know if the San Mateo County Library is involved in this yet, but I do remember that Amazon said that ebooks would be available to 8,000 or 12,000 libraries throughout the country by the end of the year. So I think the same thing might be happening in San Mateo.
It is, yeah.
And I saw something in today's Wall Street Journal that said that since ebooks were introduced in Seattle, the ebook volume increased by 32%, whereas it had been rising at 10 to 15% a month prior to this Amazon program. So I hope that in the planning of the future library, a great deal of study be devoted to the impact of ebooks. And I was concerned when I read the needs assessment that I couldn't find the word ebooks or references to it anywhere in that document, which led me to believe that it hadn't been considered then, which was 2009, and ebooks were just in the gestation stage. Well, now they're growing like wildfire, and between now and the time the library is built, I suspect that ebooks will have taken over the volume of at least newly published books, which will greatly impact how much space you need in the library. Maybe not for older volumes, but certainly for newer volumes. And as time goes on, the percentage of ebooks is going to continue to increase. So I hope we study that in great depth in the remaining planning process.
It will be, and I would like to encourage you to refer to the report that we made to council. The needs assessment was the beginning step. During the process that we've gone through over the last few months, there was a library consultant, Kathy Page, who worked with this committee, the community through focus groups, and the library on putting together an initial template for the library, and that work is continuing to be done. And it is my understanding that technology is part of that analysis. So we sort of moved on from the needs assessment. And I really encourage you to look at the appendix items in our report, and to and if you have questions or you can't find it, please contact us and we'd be happy to talk to you. But certainly technology and flexibility to address changing technology and the changing types of collections is part of what we're doing.
It's been of paramount importance since that needs assessment, the changing technology. I've been updating them as to what the JPA has been doing, and the fact that they are now expending a large sum of money and wish they could expend more. How much was our last budget increase for ebooks? I remember you wanted it to be greater, but because of budgetary limitations, we couldn't. It was
I'd have to check on
several
that, but
$100,000.
yeah, it's similar. I mean, that article about Santa Clara, that's happening throughout. And part of the issue is just the availability of ebooks right now, but that's gonna, increase significantly. But you're right on target. We're definitely enthusiastic about the Amazon announcement. That's huge, that they've made that available for lending books, and we're increasing and continuing to shift money from print purchases to electronic and music, and video will be next.
I think it's going to take a while before that influences the space
Sorry, I
requirement.
have to excuse myself. If somebody else in the hospital.
You want me to turn this?
One last part of that is I noticed that the New York Times bestseller list includes bestsellers for printed books, bestsellers for ebooks, Wall Street Journal, weekly bestseller list includes separation of ebooks and printed books. I've been trying to find out not only the rankings, but what the volumes are of ebooks versus printed books, and that kind of information seems to have a great time lag and maybe only comes out annually, but,
In the total publishing world?
yeah.
Yeah.
Jack,
But just for the Friends of the Library that buys the bestsellers that I like to read, and this one I haven't finished, but it's a Friends book and I can renew it right away. Which I
And we'll
couldn't
leave
if
our
they're
library.
on hold.
Yeah.
But you can buy about twice as many ebooks per dollar as you can printed books. So you can get even more ebooks in the future than you have in the past.
I mean, we've discussed a new library from the perspective of what really could ultimately remain. Archival, children's books, because parents want children's books in hard form, and the old guard that might want some books, especially some new books, in hard copy. But basically, most of the transition is to ebooks, and we've discussed that with Group 4, we've discussed that with Kathy Page. We recognize, and we've asked them to recognize that transitioning toward an electronic age. That has been considered in the projections that we've been trying to make for a new library. Every time we meet with them, we emphasize that. It's been emphasized at the JPA, I've related it to Group 4, and they have stated to us, that's why this building, but for an archive, but for a heritage room, but for children's books, because parents want and children want books that they can turn pages back and forth and the pictures. There aren't a lot of things in a library that aren't transitioning toward electronics. We recognize that, and we have impressed upon them that that's what our library has to recognize.
And I think I would just add to that one of the, collections is just one of the drivers in space planning. Really what is driving current libraries today is the need for program space, because we're doing all of, the people. And that people are not, just coming and picking up an item. They're actually staying for programs or staying for that community interaction. So collections is one driver, and actually overall collections are probably the space you're right on. It's going to decrease because we don't need the shelf space anymore. But one of the things that Atherton certainly is lacking is that space for separate children's programs, and that's a significant driver. It's the people space versus the collection.
Right.
So that's kind of
And separate computer space.
Right. Quiet space.
Quiet space
Quiet
for reading,
space.
yeah.
And all that space that's needed for things that don't exist now,
right.
some of that could come available from the shelf space that's
Sure.
freed up by
Yeah,
ebooks.
sure.
That's right.
And I'd like to see somebody with a great crystal ball
Jack,
that tells us what that's gonna be by 2015.
number one, the whole discussion since at least I've been involved in this is that the library needs to be flexible. And could you tell me why you think we want it to be flexible?
Well, one reason is to allow for these kind of changes.
Exactly. That's exactly the point.
Exactly.
We don't have a crystal ball.
And all of the needs assessments have always insisted that that the library be designed whatever or wherever or how large or how small, that it be flexible, and specifically directly for that reason.
Okay, well,
10 years and 20 years, Jack, wherever we are today, and wherever we think we're going to go, I can guarantee you we're not going to be there. It's going to be entirely different. Stuff we haven't even thought about.
But one
is going to be
space
making it.
thing in the favor of the park is most libraries are looking at a large project room for big groups. We can use the pavilion. And
you can use what?
the pavilion,
Mhm.
because it'll be right next door. And that saves us from having to have a big, large project room for, sometimes we have 100 people in the library for events, and there's no room to put them. And so I think, that's one of the advantages of what's been chosen, is that you can have a smaller facility there because you have that big room to utilize.
I guess one of my concerns is that the time horizon for the planning of the library is, I guess, 2015. And what you build, you want to make sure it meets the needs for 2015, including children's room, teen room, conference room, what have you. But if you build the 2015 library to include just a little space for ebooks plus all the space for these other things, you'll find that you've got excess space that by 2020 that need not have been built.
That isn't how it's being
But something
projected.
is going to happen to fill up that space. There'll be something that will fill it up, whether it's needed or not. So my concern is don't overbuild by 2015.
And once the location is finalized, then the size is the big question, and that's where everybody
Well,
needs to
I'd
come
say
in.
that's putting the cart before the horse. First, size should be determined, then the location.
Okay,
because
so
size-
we're going
size-
beyond the agenda right now?
Yeah,
Okay,
well-
and I think I'm gonna make a motion that we
All right.
adjourn.
I move the, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.